3 steps. That's all that's behind rendering a page. 1. The URLs compared against the routes until one matches. 2. Symfony reads the underscore controller key and executes that function. And 3. We build the page inside the function. The controller is all about us. It's where we shine. Whether the page is HTML, JSON, or a redirect, we make that happen in this function. We might also query the database, send an email, or process a form submission here. Controller functions are dead simple. And there's just one big rule. It must return a Symfony response object. To create a new response, add its namespace to the top of the controller class. I know the namespace is horribly long, so this is where having a smart IDE like PHP Storm will make you smile. Now create the new response object and quote Admiral Akbar. And as you can see, our page has the text and nothing else. Again, controllers are simple. No matter how complex things seem, the goal is always the same. Generate your content, put it into a response, and return it. How would we return a JSON response? Let's create an array that includes the first name and count variables and turn it into a string with JSON encode. Now it's exactly the same as before. Pass that into a response object and return it. Now our browser displays a JSON string. Wait, there is one problem. By using my browser's developer tools, I can see that the app is telling my browser that the response has a text HTML content type. That's okay, we can fix it easily. Just set the content type header on the response object to application/JSON. Now when I refresh, the response has the right content type header. I know I'm repeating myself, but this is important, I promise. Every controller returns a response object, and you have full control over each part of it. All right, time to celebrate! You've just learned the core of Symfony. Seriously, by understanding the routing controller response flow, we could do anything. But as much as I love printing Admiral Akbar quotes, life isn't always this simple. Unless we're making an API, we usually build HTML pages. We could put the HTML right in the controller, but that would be a trap! Instead, Symfony offers you an optional tool that renders template files. But before that, we should take on another buzzword: services. These are even trendier than bundles. Symfony is basically a wrapper around a big bag of objects that do helpful things. These objects are called services, a techie name for an object that performs a task. Seriously, when you hear service, just think PHP object. Symfony has a ton of these services. One sends emails, another queries the database, and others translate text and tie your shoelaces. Symfony puts the services into a big bag called the Mystical Service Container. Okay, I may have added the word mystical. It's just a PHP object. And if you have access to it, you can fetch any service and start using it. And here's the dirty secret. Everything that you think Symfony does is actually done by some service that lives in the container. You can even tweak or replace core services, like the router. That's really powerful. In any controller, this is great news, because, surprise, we have access to the mystical container via this container. One of the services in the container is called templating. I'll show you how I knew that in a bit. This templating object has a render method on it. The first argument is the name of the template file to use, and the second argument holds the variables we want to pass to the template. The template name looks funny because it's another top secret syntax with 3 parts. First, the bundle name, second, a directory name, and third, the template's file name. This looks like the underscore controller syntax we saw in routes, but don't mix them up. One points to a controller class and method. This one points to a template file. Open up the template. Welcome to Twig, a curly little templating language that you're going to fall in love with. Right now, just get fancy by adding a strong tag. Back in the controller, the render method returns a string. So just like before, we need to put that into a new response object and return it. Refresh. There's our rendered template. Now we still don't have a fancy layout, but relax, I can only go so fast. Since rendering a template is pretty darn common, we can use some shortcuts. First, the templating service has a render response method. Instead of returning a string, it puts it into a new response object for us. Now we can remove the new response line and its use statement. Better. Now let's do less. Our controller class extends Symfony's own base controller. That's optional, but it gives us shortcuts. Open up the base class. I'm using a go-to file shortcut in my editor to search for the controller.php file. One of its shortcuts is the render method. Wait, this does exactly what we're already doing. It grabs the templating service and calls render response on it. Let's just kick back, call this method, and return the result. I'm sorry I made you go through the long route, but now you know about the container and how services are working behind the scenes. And as you use more shortcut methods in Symfony's base controller, I'd be so proud if you looked to see what each method actually does. Controllers are easy. Put some code here and return a response object. And since we have the container object, you've got access to every service in your app. Oh right, I haven't told you what services there are. For this, go back to our friend console and run the container debug command. It lists every single service available, as well as what type of object it returns. Color you dangerous. Okay, onto the curly world of Twig.